we got to come and tell him this thing you made someone's life easier and their day-to-day easier. That's an incredible thing to own.
Stevie, thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're a new mother. You've expanded the family, and we're in the middle of sort of the witching hour of an evening, but we've sort of talked through that, and Bub's down and Bub's asleep, and so we've got some time to have a chat, but thank you so much for making some time for me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually the best time because now is when I can relax.
Take a breath.
And she's safe, she's down, she's happy, asleep. So
yeah.
It's good.
Awesome. So for those people that don't know us, Stevie and I have been working together now for near on 7 years in one way or another. Stevie was one of my first account executives when I worked in Dream Factory, and she was a fresh salesperson herself in SaaS. And so we both kind of cut our teeth at the same time in learning what it means to be a part of a SaaS company, what it means to be a part of a SaaS sales funnel. And I certainly really appreciated that journey that you and I were both able to go through together for our time in Dream Factory. Can you just give us a little bit of a background about sort of where you came to before your experience in SaaS and sort of up to today?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started in service. I was a cosmetologist, and service and sales, I definitely have come to know that they're like almost fraternal twins, I would say, so closely related. But I started in service as a cosmetologist and did wedding hair and makeup for 15 years. And that sort of service industry a lot is about getting to know people and getting to know people very quickly, building relationships really quickly because you are a part of someone's wedding day, which is so huge. And you want to feel like best friends when you're, on your wedding day dealing with people.
Yeah, for sure.
And I had some time at a bar and restaurant, which is where I met the Dream Factory team. And that's also service. And that is also very fun and very quick to get to know people. Very when you're serving people, or especially in a bar, you get to know people just like in hairstyling. People will tell you their whole life story, and you build relationships really, really fast. And I will say that is something moving into the SaaS world that has been extremely valuable for me to have as a lesson of how to build a relationship with somebody really fast. You get to a point with them where they know they can trust me, that I'm not going to attempt to sell them something they don't need, or any of those sales, old school sales things that people seem to still think.
I think it speaks a lot to that counterculture against the modern, gap selling's always been a big, foundation of SaaS training. You hear a lot of talk about gap selling or pain-based selling. And I think from what I've seen, and we do, tons of call reviews on sales calls across each company we work with, the majority of those chats where the account manager, account executive, the person selling the product is seen as a trusted advisor or a confidant or someone that is just there to help them find a decent solution. They're the real valuable conversations, and they're the ones we rate really highly, right? Because it just allows the client to feel like they're actually going to get a solution that's in their best interest, not so much just for the outcome of the vendor. So yeah, I agree. I think that the ability to really quickly establish rapport, really quickly establish a relationship, get them to feel comfortable, 100% sets you in good stead.
Yeah. And transitioning into SaaS was an adventure for sure. The only thing that I knew about software when I moved into SaaS was that I couldn't hold it with my hands. And, we went through a period of trying to see, can someone who's completely non-technical sell a technical product? And in some ways, yes, because the relationship side, and in many ways, no. It was a test that I believe didn't work out. I felt that I had to learn at least more about, as you know, Luke, APIs having to do with Dream Factory. I need to know specifically about what Dream Factory was doing in order to be that trusted advisor. Because like you said, I do believe there is so much trust to be built when you seem as if you are the expert for what they might need to find. It may not be what you have, but if I could be trusted to say, this is what you need, or this maybe isn't what you need, I needed to at least know that much.
Yeah. I think what we found with you in particular, and, like I said, I was going through that same experience myself. I'd been in sort of software, digital projects kind of things, but I'd never been in a SaaS pure selling role to, and leading a sales team. And I think you're right in that an effective salesperson is able to do those basic things like build rapport, break down the barriers, discovery, understand the problem and really unpack it in a way that's easy and really good experience for the client. But when they then say, do you integrate with X, or how do I integrate X with Y and in what way? You kind of like, that's where you need that level of technical knowledge, right? But I think it also proves that that's when, on the flip side of that, you may well have a very tech-focused individual who can easily answer that question, but can't wrap everything else up like you would in that early stage, right? So that idea that we ran with after there for a while was, well, we knew that we had really great salespeople that could really communicate, form relationships, build a trusted advisor style role, but there would be gaps in that technical knowledge, particularly because we were selling into enterprise infrastructure, right? That's the big leap. And so when we started coupling our AEs with our SEs, we started to see, greater deal velocity, better traction in calls, and just better outcomes for the client, because instead of having to go away and answer a question, we were actually able to spin into the call. And at the end, if the salesperson has to step back and just listen to the conversation for a while, write notes down, and then at the end go, okay, great. Sounds like we're in a position to move forward, or hey, I don't think we're quite there yet. Let's have another call with just the SE. I felt like that was a good balance to find. Now, that's not going to be appropriate for every SaaS company, right? In that if we think of Dream Factory, where we were at, enterprise calls, really experienced developers on the client side, big picture, big movements. When we talk about sort of more small scale B2C, and we could probably start to talk about FiveCRM, BeePurple, and Baremetrics even, that conversation is a little bit easier for non-technical people, because I think the value proposition is clearer and we can relate it a little bit easier. But yeah, I certainly found that was a great way to balance that out for our enterprise sales for sure.
Yeah, that experience, you and I kind of shared that together, because we tested that together almost. Where was it, could I be on these calls with developers, with enterprise level C-suite and talk confidently? And at the time, no. And I remember specifically coming to you, and this translates into, actually managing teams rather than being in the sales side, is I came to you saying, hey, this is the problem. This is why it's happening. This is when it's happening. This is how it's happening. Here's what I think we should do to fix it.
Yeah.
What do you think? And you were very receptive to that. And you said, okay, let's try it. So from a management perspective, I was able to see an example of a leadership that was understanding and listening to what I had to say, and giving me the opportunity to test something different, and was able to, because then you had told me, well, if things like this happen, come to me with that same sort of, this is the problem, this is what I think we could do about it, and here's how it happened, all of those things. You were like, okay, if there's another problem, just do that same thing again. We'll discuss it. And so I've brought that in with me too. If there is an issue, I always want those that are coming to me with something to come to me with what is happening, how it's happening, what we think we should do about it.
And I think we couldn't afford not to in such a small team, right? We were only a small team at that time, and it would be arrogant and dismissive of a leader such as myself in that position to not consider, what the team is saying, especially again, considering I was still cutting my teeth in the SaaS world myself. So I think that the example we always had as well that was really cool to have someone who had less SaaS experience and came in with a new eyes. We had our mutual colleague, Lewis, who's going to be on the podcast soon. Very experienced SaaS seller, can sell, knows how to sell, has a really robust personal style on how to sell, and had a very particular way of doing things. And it was great to see. Lewis and I worked together over that same period, and my relationship with him was such that I couldn't really understand his style to begin with. It was really abrasive to me. But I was looking at it from the person coming from the outside in, but it worked. His style worked in many ways, and he was able to land big accounts and get really good relationships going with clients. And so that was really refreshing for me to see that, okay, there are certain ways that we can run a SaaS funnel in where an experienced SaaS salesperson come in, but there are ways to improve when you welcome the opinions and the viewpoints of people that are looking from the outside in, essentially, right? That's where I think a lot of leaders could do better, is understanding there's more than one way to do things, and welcoming that input before deciding on an outcome is certainly important.
Yeah, that's definitely how I am, in my leadership position now as well. I learned that receptiveness, I think, from you. I mean, prior to SaaS, I was leading teams, but I was more of doing things for myself. And I was worried, I suppose you could say, about moving into a position where I didn't have control over everything I was doing the way I was doing it.
Yeah, I think that leads into a really good segue into our next part of the conversation. One of the reasons I wanted to get you on this call is I do a lot of chats with founders of SaaS companies. I do a lot of calls about, how do I get my first 10 customers, or how to optimize my conversion funnels, look at my homepage, look at my pricing page, all that sort of SaaS fundamentals, right? Your journey, I think, is really inspiring in that you were able to come from a non-SaaS background into a SaaS company, still being an individual contributor as an individual AE. You then moved through Dream Factory in our sense into another company outside where you're looking at high ticket sales, sort of larger ASP accounts, big account management, a lot of conferences, a lot of travel, right? A lot of face-to-face sales. And then you're effectively able to make the transition back into sort of our network where you're now the leading general manager CEO of FiveCRM and BeePurple, an outbound CRM originally based for telemarketing, but making some really great strides in addiction recovery centers. How do you feel you've changed since, let's say, 2018 as an individual contributor through to now as a GM CEO?
I think that through every single one of my experiences, I've been able to take something unique from each and apply that. But I think what might be one of the most advantageous things about my unique experience, the most advantageous thing I think is to have been in the shoes of those that I am leading. I know exactly what it's like to be an individual contributor on every level now, especially when it comes to smaller sales all the way up to enterprise sales to extremely large casino level deals, multi-million-dollar deals at a time. I've been in every different shoe, and that has put me in such an empathetic position for every level of sales. Because when it comes to SaaS, we're all sales. It doesn't matter if you're GM or if you're an SDR or if you're in marketing or if you're a dev even. There's so much to think about. And I think that the best team members actually do see things that way. We're all in sales, and my level, if you will, as a GM, it's not really that different. I do lead a team, but I wouldn't be asking any of my team to do anything I haven't done or wouldn't do still. I think them knowing that also helps them to be like, I'm not going to say, well, you should do this because I said so type of situation. Yeah. I really hope that doesn't still happen in this day and age. But transitioning into being a leader more, it gives me so much opportunity to be creative, to think about what we could do, what we should do. And I might be wrong probably many times. The opportunity to test things, which I think is a little bit less when you're actually an individual salesperson. We follow what we're supposed to do with, of course, some opinion. But we get leads. We do the sales strategy that seems to fit best, and we have some room to try different things. Especially, Lewis, he'll get to have that conversation. He has a lot of freedom to go around and do different things, try different things, and talk about different things and see how it goes. But the level that I'm at now, the opportunity to be so creative and to have the empathy to understand where the individual salespeople are at and what's going on with them, I think has been an extremely advantageous and fun place to be. Yeah,
for sure. And I think you pointed out a couple of interesting things. The empathy piece, or having walked through someone's shoes, as well as I do, part of our sort of standards is, GM-led sales. Having a CEO that's been in a sales funnel, that's led those conversations, that's worked a deal, it does allow you to understand that it's not as easy just saying, sign here, right? There's a lot of back and forth behind that. There's negotiation, there's invoice management, there's accounts receivable, there's all that stuff that goes into that conversation. So having that experience, absolutely, you can be empathetic. And I think it's a good point too. If your team knows that you've been there, done that, then they would expect that the things you're asking of them are not outside of the real, right? And the expected. So that to me is, you've hit the nail on the head there for sure. I think when you talk about the additional, obviously, responsibilities you gain as a CEO or GM, that's one thing. And then you have to decide, which way are we going to point this ship and which way are we going to run? That's also quite liberating though too, right? Because I think a lot of people that may be ambitious in that senior sales role, head of growth, head of revenue, that see themselves as leaders, they may feel bound in certain companies that they can't contribute to maybe the strategic direction. And so as leaders, we like to recognize those individuals that want something more, that want to contribute, give them ways to do it, give them channels to contribute.
That's a very good point, because honestly, I think what really helps with any team member, whether they're sales or not, which again, we all are, right, is feeling ownership in the growth of the company.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And being able to tie your own goals and achievement to the rolled up goals and achievement of the company, I think is important. Very much in small teams. Small teams, you can't hide. Like small teams, your individual contributions will have an impact, and you need to know that they do. And so it's behests leadership to be able to call that out as well.
Yeah, to show that something is owned by someone. I mean, even if it's a small thing, like particularly a quick example is one of my team members, Liam. He's head of support, and he was an integral part of putting together an app in Adala that actually helps people in recovery centers to track their inventory. And we came back from a conference to tell Liam that there's an individual in San Antonio, Texas, whose life he has made easier because he spent time building. And yeah, those are things that we get to do in small teams, and those conversations that we get to have, like, even if, and hopefully it's many more, but even if it's that one individual, we got to come and tell him this thing you made someone's life easier and their day-to-day easier. That's an incredible thing to own.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, having that feedback so that individual knows that contribution was recognized, was worthwhile. Yeah, it's absolutely part of that small team motivation, I think.
And then sharing the fulfillment in what you do is very, very important.
Yeah. And I think that leads me to my next sort of line of questioning. And I know, Steve, we didn't prep with any questions here. This was just going to be a conversation, but this one might take a bit of thought. But coming from, again, the major roles you played as a sales leader in Dream Factory, enterprise infrastructure, in the casino industry in regards to regulation, compliance, and software frameworks there. Moving into your role inside BeePurple now, which you can give a brief sort of spiel on what BeePurple does. But to me, working alongside you in that capacity now and understanding what BeePurple does, it's not a traditional SaaS value proposition in my mind. Right? You're not sitting down and looking at someone's databases and their CRMs and their front end and everything else that goes with that sort of conversation we'll be used to. The platform you're offering inside BeePurple is fundamentally offering different value to its users. And I'd love to understand how you have seen like your own opinion change on how you sell BeePurple versus a Dream Factory. So yeah, maybe if you want to start with just giving a brief rundown of what BeePurple does at the moment, where you're at, and then how your style or your opinions on SaaS sales has changed because of that.
Yeah. So I think this, being in the position that I'm in now, is almost, I mean, I don't know if I subscribe very much, but it feels meant to be, if you will. Because of all the different experiences that I've had leading up to it. They've all been so different. They've always all been little pieces I could take from each. But this is very different from what I know to have been SaaS. And again, I'm not an expert or experienced over a lifetime, but what I know SaaS to be is not what I'm doing now. That's okay. Of course it is still, but so BeePurple, it's a software that is made for recovery centers. It's made for peer support at recovery centers. It's made for intake admin at recovery centers. And I'm speaking about addiction recovery centers. It helps them be able to stop having so much of things rotating in their minds, a lot of things that they need to get done, or people they need to contact, people they need to stay in contact with and keep a connection with, because they need that connection in order to stay in recovery easier. So how it does that, like traditional CRMs, you would have task management, right? And you would have things to like phone support. There's telephone recovery support, there's task management, there's checkboxes, drop downs, all the things that you would assume you're putting into a database. The people that we speak to every day, though, they at best are able to use Excel, and at worst, they're having to keep track of everything in their minds. And in the middle, and very often, are still using pen and paper. So this is not your traditional B2B SaaS where you're going to find everybody on LinkedIn, do your email campaigns that everybody's going to either want to ignore your email or actually see something that they want to click on. I mean, these people, some of them don't even engage with their email on a day-to-day, which is very different from our B2B SaaS that we know of. At that level, what BeePurple does, it helps peer support stay connected to those people who are in recovery. At higher level, it would take, like, let's say there's a group of recovery centers and they are all run by a fund or a group that is the management group for those recovery centers. All of the data that all those peer support are putting in at the recovery center level, at intake, with the peer support, at the meetings, all of that data can be viewed in dashboards at the management level. And there's, of course, role-based access and, all the permissions, everything that we know, right? And then at the highest level, you would talk about like state funding level, where the state funds many, many recovery centers in their state.
Yep.
And that level needs aggregated data to understand the impact that the dollars they're funding are having.
Yeah, trends on programs.
Yeah, so we're able to help these recovery centers prove the impact that they're having on the community.
Yeah.
Not just have a few amazing success stories of individuals who have made it through a program and who are still in recovery to this day, but also in numbers prove what programs are working, what ones could use work, what the actual center is doing, how many reduced overdoses have there been. Many data points that can help these people prove and brag about what they're doing for people.
Yeah.
So my day-to-day now, I get to speak to people who are heroes in their communities and tell them that I have something that could help them stay connected and keep track and brag about what they're doing. That's a big difference from what we were doing at Dream Factory. I love my time at Dream Factory, and still a huge fun time in my heart. But it's a lot more of an emotional conversation now.
Yeah.
People get to tell their stories.
Yeah.
I get to hear their stories about the heroic work they're doing, and I get to tell them that we have something that means that they don't have to have these things rotate in their head all day long, all night long, which is just not mentally sustainable.
Yeah. I think for me, working alongside you guys as we transition sort of from what would be considered a traditional outbound CRM, right? That's the fundamental platform. And if you think about the purpose of the CRM, like you said, to organize deals, contacts, deal timelines, notes, etc., actions, tasks, that's at its base. But when you switch it and you come into the lens of understanding, and I think that the tagline we often talked about was connection beats addiction, right? Understanding that these individuals in that space need to have that constant communication, the support, and that's what enhances those outcomes for each of those organizations. Suddenly that CRM shifts from being just paper deals going through a pipeline to actual people, right? People-focused outcomes. Those contacts in there are real people battling through addiction that need support services, that need communication, that need connection, and having that as a value prop is completely different to a traditional CRM. So I've really appreciated that shift in focus, I think, in that messaging and that tone. And I certainly can see the outcome of the effort you guys have been putting in and already the organizations you're working with. Yeah.
Yeah. The sentiment in the addiction recovery world is that the key to recovery is connection. So that's what we decided on as our tagline, because that's what we do. We have a program that helps people stay connected, and that's incredible.
All right, Stevie, we were just talking about the key messaging in addiction recovery centers and your communication within BeePurple. What do you think the key sentiment is in these addiction recovery centers and why they seek out something like BeePurple to help them?
Yeah, so the shared sentiment in the addiction recovery world is that the key to recovery is connection. So that is what we do. We provide a software that can help people at the recovery community centers themselves stay connected to people who are in recovery.
And I think, just seeing the shift in how BeePurple's been able to move its platform ability and its features and benefits into something inside that addiction recovery space, it's really great to see. And I'm glad I've been able to be a part of that and see you guys as you grow and develop. The thing that's most inspiring to me as well is hearing the feedback on sales calls from word of mouth networks, where they say, hey, we saw so-and-so at this state conference. They had nothing but great things to say about you. That is kind of the dream for any business, right? Where you're not paying money to advertise. Your value proposition is clear. It is well understood. The benefits have been realized by people in your industry already, and they are screaming out about it. That to me has been the real eye-opener for the way you guys do business, is the ability to generate that word of mouth referral, because you are actually delivering great outcomes that are easily visible by those individuals.
Yeah, some of these people who have referred us to others, I can't thank them enough for the confidence that they've had in us in order to make those introductions for us.
Yeah.
It's been incredible.
But it's testimony to your hard work, right? You're actually delivering on what you promised. Like, and that's half the gap in getting word of mouth referrals. It's like, well, yeah, we thought we were going to get X, Y, and Z, but it was kind of X, Y, A, B, C instead.
Because of this industry itself too, they've been burned a lot. Yeah, I think a big thing in going from non-SaaS to going into individual sales to going into leadership, being able to have that wide range, I think has been advantageous in making me be adaptable, I suppose, because this is obviously nowhere that FiveCRM road seemed to ever be going toward, and not having any sort of like emotional pull to stay stagnant or to hold on to something and not move forward into something else if it's not the traditional ICP or the thing that it was originally supposed to be for. I mean, being able to be adaptable and to not be emotionally attached to staying in one place.
All good. Hey, Stevie, so one last thing, question off the cuff. If you were to go back to 2018, go back to that first day on the job with Dream Factory, what's one piece of advice you would give yourself, knowing what you know now, to that person who you were in 2018?
I would have to say, keep bringing up your ideas and your opinions. Don't shy away from speaking to leadership, because I think I was too afraid in the beginning. And you definitely helped me with that because you actually listened. So that was good. So moving into leadership, being a leader that listened. So I would say probably, bring more ideas to the table and stay loud.
Yeah, stay loud. That's a good one. Nice. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat. And I think it's certainly for me, it's always interesting talking to and working with people like yourself that have been able to transition from individual contribution into becoming a really strong leader inside a really strong company that's got a really exciting roadmap and an exciting way forward. So I certainly look forward to continuing to work with you as you lead BeePurple into the fray. And excited for big things coming up.
Yeah, thanks so much. Thanks for the conversation. It's been fun.
Awesome. Thanks, Stevie.